Hello and welcome to the Fundamentals of Lute Playing. My name is Laudon Schuett, and today we'll be continuing with our mini-series on divisions or embellishment. In the previous two episodes, we were focused primarily on creating divisions between melodic points. So for example, if you're playing a piece and you have an interval like a fifth, and you want to add an embellishment to that, you do something like, or maybe something like. This episode is going to be more about taking homophonic chord progressions and breaking them or arpeggiating them and working with different patterns to take something very simple and turn it into something a lot more interesting. And we'll talk a little bit about how a composer might approach it or how an improviser might approach it, or even if you're looking at a piece in the repertoire that just doesn't have ornamented repeats. So first, let me show you the progression we're going to work. It's very, very simple. The melodic element is just going to be a descending line from C to C. So going C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, C. That's it. And we're going to harmonize that. I'll take you through those chords. So the very first chord is going to be C, E, C, or 1-3 octave. Then the next chord is going to be G, D, B, 1-5-3. Then the next chord is going to be F, F, A, octave third. And then we're going to go C, E, G, so 1-3-5. And then we're going to go D, A, F, 1-5-3, and then we're going to go C, C, E, or 1 octave 3, and then we do a 4-3, and then we resolve there. And of course, you can also take this pattern and go the other way. Keep that in mind. Everything I show you, we're going to kind of use the descending version because I think it sounds better, and I feel like it's a more common. I think of passacalias, I think of other things like that, where these descending lines, there's just, I don't know, they have a more beautiful effect than the ascending one, but you could absolutely do anything we talk about today and go the other way. And of course, you can change keys. You could do something like. Actually, like that seventh in there, yeah, there we go. You could change keys. In general, we're going to be focusing on embellishing root position chords, just because all of the grounds I gave you in the previous two episodes are in root position, and I think it's just a good idea to get used to root position. I threw in a little sixth there at the end of the one in G just to avoid a parallel, but in general, I think it's nice to start off with those root position chords. So what I recommend is set aside a couple afternoons where you take this passage, this chord progression, and what we're going to do is we're going to play around, and I'm going to give you some examples, but of course you can come up with your own. You can look at the surviving repertoire to see if you can find different ideas, different ways of doing it. So what I want to do is let's treat each thing like it's a quarter note. So like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 4, something like that, or in 2. It doesn't really matter. And then the first type of break I want to do splits that quarter note in 2. And I think the simplest one is you just play the bass note and then you play the upper 2 notes. So doing something like this. I think that already adds some interest. And of course, you want to get really comfortable with this. But then you can start saying, well, okay, how do I make something like that more interesting? And it's really not anything brilliant, but all I did was or divide or break, leave alone. divide or break, leave alone. Now I've set up that pattern, right, which is, you know, broken, not, broken, not. And then you're expecting the same thing on the next one. You know, that sort of thing. But then I changed the pattern. And that rule of three is something that you'll hear if you're into composition or if you're into improvisation. The idea is you set up a pattern with two things and then break it. And that sometimes it's a lot of fun, and obviously it can get a little predictable, but it's a cheap way of just making something more interesting than sticking with it. So that is one very simple thing you can do: bass, and then the upper notes. And the reason I'm doing 3-part harmonies here is just because it's much simpler to avoid parallels and things like that. You can obviously apply these things with either an existing 4-part chord progression, or you can write your own. What's nice is to kind of make sure that you've worked out all the parallels and things. But this is nice because it's a little less to deal with. Now you can also do the reverse. So start high and go low. Which is kind of nice. And then the other one is you can do a split. So you can play the low note and the high note. Let's just call it bass. We'll say the lowest note we'll call bass, the middle note we'll call alto, and the top note we'll call soprano. So play the soprano and the bass together, and then the alto between. That's really nice, right? You could start to mix them. Oh, you know, I think I would do something more like... And we haven't talked about that one yet. But, you know, just starting to blend these things. And I think one thing to keep in mind is, especially if you're coming from a classical background and you're used to sort of dutifully doing everything very carefully, I think this needs to be a messy thing. I think you need to be sitting for an hour and really, you know, sometimes screwing up and making things that don't sound very good. You know, if you try something and you're like, oh, this isn't working, that's a good thing. You're eliminating things as well. And of course, you just go through all of these different possibilities. So the next thing, you might be able to do alto and bass. Do something like that, and go through all the permutations. You can write it down, or you don't have to. If you are an improviser, what I would recommend is getting insanely comfortable with just 2 different little things. So for example, we'll be adding some more, like we're going to do a pattern where we go 1 and... So maybe you get really comfortable with that pattern and you learn to do it in a bunch of different keys. So you do something like, you know, something like you just learn to do it in a bunch of keys. Yeah, there we go. You know, you just learn to do it on a bunch of different keys in a bunch of different places, but fewer permutations at first, and then you very slowly add one as you go. For the composers, I think you can right off the bat just be a little more experimental, since you have more time to prepare the piece, you have more time to think about it. That's true as well if you're writing your own divisions for an existing piece that doesn't have any. So let's talk about some dividing each beat into 3 parts. So for example, there's that one that I showed you already, which is 1 and... That one's pretty common. I'll see that in like Doland and Bachelor and all of that, and I find it to be a very kind of energizing, fun thing. There's the reverse of it. It's not as common. I think there's like one John Johnson Pavin, and it's got this beautiful... I really love this. So you're going bass, soprano, alto. And again, you know, you could mix these things up. And then there I sped it up. I love speeding it up as you get toward the cadence, right? You have something that's kind of slow. You know, just playing around with rhythmically what balances everything out. So those two patterns are really nice for 3 notes. You can do a sort of half tremolo. Like that one. That's kind of nice. I've used that before. And then we get into, and obviously you could go something like, I like that one as well. You know, going through and just figuring out every possible permutation is really nice. And then you get into 4-note patterns. And one of my favorites is you start with soprano, alto, bass, soprano, and this creates this nice little melodic pattern, which is so going. And I think I really like that. And one thing to bear in mind, and there's a variation on that, which is you play the bass note at the same time, alto twice, and then soprano again. So, and I did something there that I think as you're getting into day 2 or 3 of doing this is a really important thing in general to keep in mind, which is that when we first start doing divisions, we're just putting them everywhere. Where, you know, let's divide everything, and then you realize that it's really nice actually to take the divisions, to not divide certain measures. So if you're working on a piece, you know, the difference between going that's fine, right? But just adding a little that gives it a little more something. And obviously none of this is like, you know, brilliant. It's just the bread and butter of making these sort of divisions, which is nice. And we can take this a step further and do full tremolo. And obviously it's really nice to have those breaks in there. And then you could change the pattern. I don't like that as much. Do something like that. And that's the thing. You go, okay, you try something. Did it sound good? Did it work? Did putting those two patterns together make sense? You know, you could do something really risky like, you know, and you go, okay, well, that didn't quite work. And again, I would like to speed up toward the cadence to balance that rhythmically. So you can just play around and have a lot of these. One of my other favorite ones, and I do want to make sure I don't forget this one. I love, and I'll give you a couple variations on it. Obviously, there's this one, which is bass, alto, soprano, bass. Yeah. I'm just improvising. You know, I didn't plan any of this out. I'm just remembering things as I go. But I love that boom, 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 boom. You know, having that rhythm going there, and you could do something. You know, I'm always trying to figure out how to, can I get that pattern to sound good in the cadence? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. For that one, probably just do that, or take out the 4/3, or just go back to the simple 4/3 there. And again, all of these things you could go the reverse. You could do that if you want. I love the descending quality. And then as you get really comfortable with this, then what you can do is you can start taking those patterns and skipping. And this is one of the reasons I really like this progression. I sort of made it intentionally so that you can do some of these things without getting parallels. But doing something like start skipping around between the chords. So all I did there, for those of you who are wondering, is I play my first chord, C, and instead of going to the G, skip down a third, and then go up to the G, and then skip down a third, then go up to the D, and make your way down. So you can start playing around with... It's not quite as interesting, but you can make bigger skips too if you would like. But I definitely think at least getting comfortable with going down a third, going up one, you can go down a third, and then go down one more step and make your way, playing around with jumping around within this little progression. It's fairly safe. I've set it up so you probably could find a way to make a parallel, but you'd have to work at it. So that was kind of my intention with this little thing, is to make it as idiot proof for my sake and for everyone else's sake. So I think getting comfortable over a couple of days with these patterns, and again, for the improviser, you may want to just get comfortable with just adding, just a couple of these little variations, and you write them out and have your pattern all in place. I'm just trying to think if there's any others. I mean, of course, there are things like, I think I did that one already, but I love that one as well. And then there are the I do like this. You can do things like this where you only hit the alto ones. I haven't used that pattern as much, I have to admit, but thinking about it, I kind of wish I did. I kind of like that. Yeah, I mean, it's probably one that I should maybe use more often. And so this is a great way to develop. And again, like I said, put it in different keys. Get comfortable. And you could either do it exactly, intervallically like I did my example, or like this, starting with the fifth on top, right? Like this. Like that, and work on it in whatever key you want to, but maybe starting with one sharp and one flat, or two sharps or two flats, and getting really comfortable with that. Then I wanted to just chat a little bit about the broken style. There are two links in the description, one to a video of a little Marco dell'Aquila ricercar, which is one of the earliest examples of sort of the broken style. And then I've also included a link to my piece, Boots Toy, so that we can chat about it a little bit here. But broken style is often associated with French music of the late 16th and then into the 17th century, and associated with other characteristics of French music that we won't go in today, like inégal. But I think it's important to understand that broken style can be found in Italy, it can be found in England, and it's not necessarily associated with inégal. And I wanted to sort of demonstrate this with the Marco dell'Aquila piece. We have this Italian from the beginning of the 16th century, first half of the 16th century, using a very, very beautiful broken style in a ricercar. So it's not just a French thing. And Boots Toy, which I wrote for a friend, was my kind of, well, what if an English person took the sort of French broken style and applied it to an English toy, which is like a little learning piece, a light piece. And the best way I think that I could come up with to describe what broken style is it's combining both vertical embellishment and horizontal embellishment. So I'll give you a little passage here. So I'm looking at measure 33. This is after the second set of double bar lines, but you've got this little chord progression. You do that again. And this is just a very kind of light, fluffy progression. We've got F going to C major, going to F, right? It's not exactly rocket science. So how do we embellish this? Well, if we look at measure 49, which is the beginning of the ornamented section, I've broken this. And I'll do it very slowly at first. So what I've done is I've got... We'll stop there. And we go like that. And you go, okay, whoa, what's going on in there? So in the unembellished version, we have our melody. And then in the embellished version, I've displaced the melody a little bit. So if I were to count, it'd be 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and did a little division there that is different. So instead of just repeating the G, I go down to C and come up. So I'm going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and so on. And then there are these vertical embellishments. So what I've done is I've taken the chord. So in the unembellished version, you have just playing the harmony. And what I've done here is I've gone 1, 2, and 1, and 2, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 1. And I think that's kind of cool. So you go 1, and 2, and 3, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 1. I think I shaved off a beat in one of those previous playthroughs. So then you combine it, and you've got the melody on top. And you do that along. And so we have the unembellished version. Versus the embellished version. Do that again. And on and so forth. And this is a fun energetic little piece that you can play around and see some different ways of breaking it. But one thing you'll notice is that it can be a little challenging to balance this vertical versus horizontal division making. I could have very easily gotten stuck doing something like... which is kind of the same thing, right? I could have done that, and it would have been fine, but I wanted to vary it up. Been a little while since I played this piece. It's kind of fun to get back into it. But finding the right balance and combining this vertical break with this horizontal embellishment is sort of the art. And I don't consider myself at all a master at this, but I've done it for a number of years, and I think I can at least make something that is somewhat enjoyable. It's somewhat pleasant to listen to. And what I would recommend, because I can't really teach, I don't know how I would teach creating that balance other than doing a lot of listening and doing a lot of experimenting to get that just right. So go through the piece. I think the opening measure is also a good example. I've got this little chord chunk here. I do, here's the embellished version that I think is like measure 17. And you can just find a way to capture that same character, to find the same character, but with the ornaments. And so forth. And it can just be a lot of fun to play around and experiment with it. And you're going to screw up and you're going to, make a mess. But I find it to be, as you craft and you work with it, and obviously this is geared more toward the composers. But I'm sure an improviser could also, take a a ground bass or something like that, like the Bergamasca, and then just slowly work on things like, and that's nothing to be proud of, but like you could start developing an improvised broken style as well. So that is maybe the next step. Now, in the next episode, what I'm going to be doing is, and I think it's going to be the final episode on divisions and embellishments, I'm going to take a piece and we're going to go through it together. And I'm going to use one of my own pieces simply because I know why I use that ornamentation. I can explain everything. I will emphasize that it is incredibly important to spend a lot of time studying pieces from the period, playing, listening, analyzing. So I certainly don't want people to think that looking at my pieces is a better way to do it. The only reason I'll use one of my pieces is that I have an answer to everything. I'm alive. I can tell you, oh, I did this because this is, and I tried these other things and it didn't work. And I wish we could ask them their reasons, but instead we have to kind of go through and work it out. And I believe with that episode, I'm going to try to include a little primer. I know some people have wanted some written things to make things easier. I will say, though, that when I started this series of odd divisions and embellishment, I wanted to get away from the idea of reading things and to be using your ear as much as possible. Obviously, in this last segment, I was reading off of a piece I have written, but these things like sitting and going through that progression, I think it would be detrimental to you if you wrote that out. I think it would be much better, and if you haven't figured out that progression yet, you take the YouTube video and you go into settings and you slow it down and the pitch stays the same, and you listen and you figure out what I'm doing, right? And then you go in a corner and you sit down and you go through it using your ear and using your mind. So I am going to include a little primer, but everything in that primer is things that you need to take away from the page. So, turn the music stand around. Don't be reading these things, and don't be afraid to make a mess. Like, certainly today, I was just kind of pulling some stuff off, shooting from the hip, as they say, and looking at a piece I haven't looked at in years here, and I get away from it needing to be perfect, and instead think about what you're creating, what's interesting, and all of that. So the final episode of this series will be a kind of walkthrough of a piece, and we'll include a little primer. I hope you have found these division episodes helpful. It's certainly not something I ever thought I would have to teach. So from a pedagogical perspective, I'm new to this. Like, this is always something that I just sat in my room and was using to write pieces. I was thinking about this stuff so that I could come up with a beautiful piece to play, and not necessarily as teaching it. I didn't get a degree in composition. I have not formally studied with any sort of composers or anything like that, but it is something that I've been doing since at least my master's in grad school. So master's and then doctorate, and then all now close to 15 years. So I've been doing it for a while, and hopefully you found some interesting tidbits that you can use either as a composer or as an improviser or arranger. If you're enjoying the channel, the best way you can support it is by becoming a subscriber. I'll also include my Patreon link in the description. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Have a blast improvising. Don't be afraid to make a mistake while doing things or screw up. Just use this as a time to kind of let loose and figure out what works and what doesn't. And I'll see you for the next episode. Bye-bye.